It is one of the biggest A-League signings in recent history. Douglas Costa, Brazilian winger, has joined Sydney FC. This is a player who has played at some of the biggest clubs in the world, Bayern Munich, Juventus, over 70 appearances in the UEFA Champions League. What a move, not just for Sydney FC. Obviously, this is a huge signing for them. And in this video, we'll talk a little bit later about how he could fit into the Sky Blues lineup, but just a big sign for the A-League. You know, we think back to a few years ago, the A-League signing the likes of Daniel Sturridge and Nani. Neither of those players really worked out, unfortunately, at the A-League. Douglas Costa, another big name player who is, as mentioned, played at some incredible clubs, some big names. And he's come to the A-League. He's come to Sydney FC. And this is a really exciting signing. And hopefully the kind of player who can bring more fans to games, help grow the league, not just for Sydney, but for the A-League. Hopefully he can draw crowds all across the country. This is a guy who's played at some clubs all around the world. He's got great experience when you look at the clubs that he's played at. You look at Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine after spending the early parts of his career in Brazil, and then Bayern Munich, Juventus in there as well. A return to Brazil later on before joining LA Galaxy, where he played a number of games over there as well. Most recently in Brazil, and then making the move over to Australia. So, wanting a new challenge. You look at the stats that he's put up as well. It's pretty impressive. Most of his games did come for Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine. Played 141 games in the league there, scoring 29 goals. And UEFA Champions League, that's where the experience is really impressive for Douglas Costa. 76 games in the UEFA Champions League. Obviously, a lot of those coming with Bayern Munich and Juventus as well, especially 11 goals in the UEFA Champions League. During his time at Juventus as well, made 73 appearances in the league, scoring 6 goals. 64 appearances in the Brazilian top flight as well. And for Bayern Munich, at the Bundesliga, 61 appearances in the top flight in Germany, scoring 9 goals. He's also contributed a really good number of assists throughout his time at some of these top leagues in the world as well. So he's going to provide, obviously, goals and assists for Sydney FC. You look at how he's going to fit into the side, and it is quite interesting. So you look at Sydney FC at the moment, the kind of players they currently have there. Joe Lolly is sort of their star attacking player. It's quite fascinating because you look at sort of the profile of Joe Lolly and Douglas Costa, and they're similar in terms of, how they play. You look at the positions that Douglas Costa has mostly played, and look at this graphic here coming from the transfermarket.com, and they've showed here that Douglas Costa has played majority of his career on that right-hand side. And Douglas Costa being a left-footed player, it allows him to cut in, on that left foot when playing on the right-hand side, and, obviously, make shots on goal from cutting in on that left foot, which is something that Sydney FC winger Joe Lolly does exceptionally well, and he's done very well for the Sky Blues over the last couple of years. So two similar players in that sense, and it begs the question, how is Douglas Costa going to fit into this side? Look, obviously he can play on the left wing. We haven't really seen Joe Lolly deployed on that left-hand side much at all during his time at Sydney FC. So it'll be interesting for Sydney FC head coach Ufuk Talay in terms of, where does he deploy Douglas Costa? Does he shift Joe Lolly out of position to allow Douglas Costa to flourish on that right-hand side? I'd expect Joe Lolly to stay on that right-hand side. I think he's the best player in the league in that position. He was fantastic last season, scored some incredible goals. Douglas Costa on the left-hand side. But the other question as well remains is that, does one of these players go through the middle and play as a striker? Look, Douglas Costa, by the looks of things, hasn't spent much time playing as an out-and-out striker. Whether, Ufuk Talay sees him playing in that position could be interesting, because they had Fabio Gomes there, another Brazilian player they had playing as their starting striker. He has left the club after his loan expired. They've got Jadon Kucharski there, Patrick Wood, but Douglas Costa, obviously just a completely different player, a different level. And I almost wonder whether they'll deploy him in that central role to allow Joe Lolly to remain on the right-hand side, and then allow that left wing to be open for some of these, talented young players to come through to play in that role. So that's going to be the real interesting thing, I think, tactically, to see how they fit Douglas Costa into the side. In terms of their chances for this season with Douglas Costa, as we mentioned earlier, he's going to bring goals, he's going to bring assists. His combinations with Joe Lolly and, with whoever plays as striker. There's still like a month to go also in the transfer window. So Sydney FC could still potentially sign another striker there's a really, really dangerous attacking, sort of trio, you like, of players being built there at Sydney FC. Douglas Costa off the left-hand side, potentially, Joe Lolly off the right-hand side, and then whoever they field as a striker. I mean, whether it is someone like Patrick Wood, Jaden Kucharski, I mean, what service to have the likes of Joe Lolly and Douglas Costa delivering crosses, creating things from wide positions. And you look at those wide areas there, that's going to be the key, I think, for Sydney FC. Those wide positions, that's where they're going to really look to exploit sides and use that pace in the wide areas there, the trickery from both Lolly and Douglas Costa as well. And then I think the other thing that's going to complement them is the two international signings that they have made in midfield. Anas Wahim, he signed as an attacking midfielder, a decent experience over in Europe as well. And Leo Sana as well, another one of these players who, again, has good experience, especially playing in Brazil, and he'll provide a solid option there at the base of midfield. There's a real good balance now for Sydney FC, and this is classic Sydney FC as well. They like to sign these big players from around the world, sign players who've got good experience in international leagues. And, we saw it last season, bringing in two Brazilians in Fabio Gomez and Gabriel Lacerda. And they were good. They were okay. They weren't amazing. They weren't like top players in the league, but they did a decent job in the end. But you look at the players they have brought in, and I think they are the right picks. I think Ufuk Talay, this is his first full season in charge of Sydney FC. You get the sense that he's been really deliberate in terms of who they bring in. Former Sydney FC player Alex Baum-Johan, we know, has been really involved when it comes to recruitment there at Sydney FC. And you just wonder whether he has had a hand in these signings. Maybe he's got some connections over in Germany, where Douglas Costa used to play, and, got some agents lined up potentially to make this move happen. But it's really exciting looking at those potential setups there for Sydney FC. You see Anas Wahim, who could potentially play in that number 10 role you imagine for Sydney FC, feeding the ball wide for Douglas Costa, Joe Lolly, and then whether it is someone like Jaden Kucharski leading the line for Sydney FC. It's a really potent attack. And then it allows, the possibility for someone like young Jaden Kucharski, who's still very young, has only played a handful of A-League games, to, potentially, be a golden boot contender, considering just the quality of players that are playing around him here at Sydney FC. But the potential is exciting. I think if you're a Sky Blues fan, you have to look at this lineup and what it could look like for this season, and just be excited about the potential and the goals that could come from it. Sides have been building some really, really impressive, attacks for this season. We look at Melbourne Victory, who are building a really strong side once again for this campaign. Central Coast Mariners should be strong once again. I mean, there's teams from, all over the league who are looking impressive. Wellington Phoenix and Auckland, I think, will be strong this year. So Sydney FC, though, I mean, with this signing of Douglas Costa, probably have to say they're leading the way, at least in terms of attack and how they are looking with those front forward players. Douglas Costa, though, what a signing for the A-League. What a signing for Sydney FC. Great to see another, big name player joining the league. And as mentioned, look, hopefully he brings fans to the games. Hopefully not just for Sydney FC, but, wherever the Sky Blues go across the league, he brings fans to the games. It's just going to be a great thing for the league. I think that, it's tricky finding that balance between, bringing in these experienced players who, a little bit older, towards the end of their careers, to be fair, but also, bringing in those young players as well. And it feels like Sydney FC are going to find that balance this season, because they still have the likes of Corey Holman, Hayden Matthews, Jaden Kucharski, which we've been talking about as well. Plenty of young players that they have coming through as well, but they still have, the Joe Lollies and the Douglas Costas now in there as well to provide that little bit of experience. Ryan Grant wearing the captain's armband again this season. This is, for me, a reason why I think Sydney FC will be one of the top contenders this season. Got a real good balance in that team, and then it could be a really, really dangerous team to watch this season in the A-League. What do you guys make of it, though? Douglas Costa, do you think he's going to work out at Sydney FC in the A-League? How many goals do you think he'll score in the A-League men's this season? Drop your thoughts and feelings in the comment section down below. Stay subscribed for more A-League content here at Coast Watch Football. My name's Lockie, and I'll see you in the next one.